not David Smith. I'm pleased that he's here with me today. I really appreciate his mood and temper, and he's going to lead some other sections. But I had to do the call to worship. Before I do that, though, I really want to give great thanks to Marilyn and to Martin, my dear friends from Musical Times Gone By, as well as the choir for providing a backdrop so that if this is no good in terms of sermon, at least you'll have been a nice place with beautiful music. So despite the power outages this morning, this is indeed a beautiful day which the Lord has made. Let us rejoice in it and be very glad, and let us count our many, many blessings. Let us be grateful for this morning for the unbelievable gift of life, for the capacity to see, to hear, to feel, and to understand. Let us be grateful for all those who have graced and blessed our days, and for everything in our life that is good and gentle and tender and kindly and gracious and forgiving and compassionate. Let us be especially grateful for the ties of love that bind us together, giving dignity, meaning, worth, and joy to all our days.
You may be seated. Don't want to make this any more strenuous on you than necessary. Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart. Welcome. Welcome to this wonderful place where your spirit can be healed, where the history can warm your soul, and where you can catch a vision that you might not catch out there in other places. For this is a wonderful institution that has promoted a perspective of God and humanity that has blessed so many. I invite you to make your offerings to strengthen this church and its ministry to the community. Our first reading is the poem Desiderata, meaning desired things. Max Ehrmann wrote this in 1927. There's some controversy about whether it is public domain. Most people think so. A wonderful poem. Go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others. Even the dull and the ignorant, they too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain or bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. So be yourself. Especially do not feign affection, neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune. But do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars, and you have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore be at peace with God, whatever you conceive God to be. And whatever your labors and aspiration in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. With all its sham and drudgery and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful. Strive to be happy.
In this morning's scripture reading, the Apostle Paul says, "My prayer to God is that your love may grow more and more in knowledge and in all manner of insight, that you may have a sense, a feel for what is vital, that you may be transparent and of no harm to anyone, your life covered with that harvest of righteousness that Jesus produces to the praise and to the glory of God." My prayer to God is that your love may grow more and more rich in knowledge and in all manner of insight, that you may have that sense for what is vital. Take those words into this time of meditation and silence, and may your prayer express the concerns of your spirit.
Hear our prayer, O Lord. Hear our prayer, O Lord. Incline thine ear to us, and grant us thy peace.
Don't you love listening to excellence? You know, I stand here and I practice all this stuff. I practice that getting into the time of meditation. But I didn't practice being quiet. My wife Lisa would know. When I get keyed up, I move faster. So it's like, enjoy this, go into this time of silence, I run back. If a better preacher would have stood up here with his head bowed, so we'd spend some time in that quiet. But next time. So, why do you go to church? Why do you go to this church? What is it that you stand for, deep, deep down at the center of your being? Not publicly, not out in public somewhere, not to stand for something out in the corner and be counted, but on a very personal level. Where do you cast your lot? At what Howard Thurman calls the very nerve center of your consent. What do you serve? What is it about you that's limitless and eternal? Where do you find renewal? Nature? Music? Where are you afforded space to sit quietly, to contemplate and to think about eternal matters? There's a well-known escalating downward trend in church membership, reportedly growing nearly 270% in the last 30 years, as people leave the church as soon as they can. Churches have long been vacant in Europe. Speaking with a younger colleague in Montreal last month, he said that nobody goes to church. It doesn't speak to them. A recent survey shows there are now as many Americans who claim no religion, 23%, as there are who identify as either Catholic or evangelical. Can Fountain Street Church remain relevant as we enter the 2020s? There's a lot of talk and celebration about our 150th anniversary this year, and people stand up here and say, we look forward to another 150 years. Maria, that's what I say too. Forget 150 years. Can we survive and thrive another 5 or 10 years? We see the budgetary limitations that we have. This is a time for action, and thank goodness we've got a very good group on the Pulpit Search Committee. Their work is of extreme importance at this point, as we search for a new leader of this great institution. Remember your sermon from last week, Dave. A great institution. We must present ourselves as favorably as possible, standing on our great history and tradition while being ready to adapt, as always, to a changing world. My belief is that we most certainly can thrive in the future if we remain true to what this place has stood for religiously for 150 years as a house of worship. Religion will continue to offer all of its benefits, but will only remain relevant to modern humankind with evolving spiritual understanding and new appreciation of the important mythologies of the past. Our world needs the kind of understanding and diversity of thought that this place embodies, and the world will be better for the very unique approach to religion that we bring. So staff was very helpful in providing all the bells and whistles. I created this service worship through materials provided, and they gave a real helpful guide, noting that one idea is plenty for a Sunday. And as my wife knows, I often don't give enough context to get my 45 ideas across. But my main idea was stated a moment ago. If we stand on what made Fountain Street Church a unique achievement in the world of religion for all these years, we will remain relevant going forward. Upon joining this place nearly 20 years ago and going through new member orientation, I was struck by a sermon delivered during our 125th anniversary, which spoke about the core pillars upon which this church stands. I don't think the sermon used the word pillar, but that's what I think of. As you listen, you will certainly disagree with many of these points. That makes perfect sense, especially here. Each of these pillars has been the subject of full sermons, if not sermon series in the past. At times, Fountain Street's been described as the impossible church, and the 5 pillars of this institution I review can seem contradictory. I hope you'll be able to see how they flow into one another and provide this solid foundation for our future. Lastly, please go past a shorthand understanding of these pillars and terms. When we use labels, that can often be so useless to understanding. For example, I've known conservatives who are much more liberal in thought and approach than card-carrying liberals who are married to their brand of liberalism. May you grow more rich in knowledge. First, this is a Christian church. Perhaps nearly all Fountain Streeters, I didn't see a shudder in the audience, but nearly all of us bristle at the notion of being labeled Christian. You kidding me? You say that to me on the street, I might punch you. I've experienced at least one occasion in which a Fountain Street minister spoke in this very summer chapel pulpit, not present company, but he spoke about his Christian approach, and I did not feel as if I was at Fountain Street. I thought, where am I? This doesn't sound anything like what I expect to get here. The husband and wife musical group Over the Rhine recently expressed a sense of discomfort with modern-day Christianity this way. We acknowledged, quote, "We acknowledge that we are both still really conflicted these days about referring to ourselves as Christian, and have been for years. Some days American Christianity, as touted by the privileged and powerful, feels mostly like an oxymoron. Often what's described as, quote, Christian doesn't describe us. And yet we find that in spite of ourselves, our doubts, our misgivings, we are still believers. I am much the same. Brought up with traditional Christian dogma and doctrine, as a child I understood that believers in Christ would be saved and the non-believers would be doomed to their eternal damnation. The notion cracked apart for me when a friend was diagnosed with cancer in middle school and would die in 11th grade. Her name was Lauren Fisher, one of the brightest, sweetest, most beautiful persons on this earth. And she was doomed to hell when she died because she was Jewish. That didn't add up to me. In this church, we've been blessed with ministers who approach Christianity in a broad way, allowing room for congregants with various viewpoints, from atheists to wherever we are on the farther other side, with various viewpoints to feel at home. We most certainly are not Christian in the mainstream stereotypical understanding of the notion. You will not find dogma, doctrine, creeds, or denominational demands here. We are a uniquely positioned Christian church and have been so for a long time. Sermons delivered in this place more than 100 years ago would be shocking to many people today. But the truths contained in those sermons endure. To the extent we abandon our Judeo-Christian heritage, we will betray our traditions and be the lesser for it. Second lightning bolt. This church is Bible-oriented, Bible-based. That Bible represents earliest man's attempt to understand himself and his world and still offers lessons today. I'm grateful to Senior Minister Fred Wooden for exploring the writings of the Apostle Paul during this last church year. Paul was a remarkable man with amazing spiritual insights that are as good today as they were then. Spiritual insights are eternal. They are not based on passing phenomena of life. Most importantly, you will express them differently today than you would in 325 AD, 1869, the year 2000, or at any other point in your life, depending on who you are and what your experiences are. My spiritual hero, Howard Thurman, who I quoted in the cover of the bulletin, delivered a dynamic series of 3 sermons based on the few words from Paul we heard earlier. May your love grow more and more rich in knowledge and in all manner of insight. Reverend Thurman interpreted those spiritual truths in a fresh, dynamic way for modern humanity. As we search for our new senior minister, and I think it's crucial that we find a strong leader who can lead while appreciating the diversity of thought within our congregation. Finding someone who knows the Bible and can communicate its insights to our congregation of critical thinkers is of paramount importance. Of course, the Bible is not infallible and not the only source of wisdom. It must be understood in light of what we've learned and continue to learn about our world. And most importantly, the church is the place to pursue a modern understanding of its particular wisdom. Where else? If we think in this beehive-busy, technologically driven, modern world of 24/7 news and information, all available at the end of your arm on your phone, if we think in our supercilious sophistication we can cast away the Bible as a source of insight and inspiration, we will betray our traditions and be the lesser for it. Our third pillar stems from a grounding in and appreciation of science and scientific exploration. Science gives us the truths of the world, but that's not our main business. Our main business here is the spirit. For example, I have a degree in actuarial science. You could call me an actuarial scientist. But I didn't come to this place Sunday after Sunday as a scientist, but rather as one seeking for the spirit, seeking for those elusive qualities that lead to a rich and abundant life. In our communal spiritual search here at Fountain Street, we are not afraid of emerging new insights and truths in the area of science. These inform our humanity. Really thrilled to see my daughter and the Benstead, well, girls, yes, there they are, here today because through my daughter, who's now going into 9th grade, a prime example is sexuality. A prime example is our sexuality education. Hard for me to say. You shouldn't say that in a church. They learn about sex, for crying out loud, in our Whole Lives it's called our Whole Lives program, or OWL. That was started by Elizabeth Barnum here, education minister, years ago. As the name implies, Our Whole Lives provides lifelong education on what's a taboo subject in many homes and schools. But especially, you don't talk about this at church. Are you kidding me? But at FSC, I am proud our children are learning about facts about their bodies at a young age in a safe environment. And it doesn't stop in character school with the OWL program. A long-standing highlight of Fountain Street youth education is the knowledge gained by Tower Clubbers in middle school, who spend devoted blocks of time over weeks and months learning from Planned Parenthood professionals. These programs involve discussion and learning about very sensitive subjects, but that knowledge is power, as opposed to the dreamy hope of ignoring such topics with youth and letting them learn on the street, or preaching approaches that are at best simply ignorant and at worst lead to undesired outcomes. We are not afraid of the truth here because we're people of the Spirit. To the degree we move away from our focus on the power of science to inform our spiritual searching, we will betray our heritage and be the lesser for it. And when I practiced this, I didn't have water after every step, but that's going to happen again. Fourth, we're independent. Do I need to tell you here that we're independent? Truly non-denominational, even before disaffiliating from the Baptist Church over 50 years ago, we are on our own as a faith community. We've been known as the impossible church. It's an extremely difficult task holding together a faith community in which so many desperately want to believe in something, but at the same time, no Fountain Streeter wants to be told what to think. We are fiercely independent as individuals. Religion is a private matter. If you want to use the religious language, it's between you and God and nobody else. In the helpful document given to us venturing into the chapel as speakers this summer, Fred Wooden, I can't believe I mispronounced that, I must be nervous, offered this apt description of our history of independent thinking. Quote, "The tradition of the free pulpit and the free pew here at FSC means preachers share the truth as they understand it, and those who listen decide for themselves whether the preacher's truth rings true for them as well." I think that holds true in any church. I go to other churches and I hear them speak and I say, no, not for me. So you see, no one here will speak for you. Not an ecclesiastical bureaucracy, not the senior minister, not the governing board. Nobody speaks for you. You are on your own. And if you cannot handle this responsibility of thinking for yourself, this place is not for you. More importantly, if we as a church ever give up our independence, either as a church as a whole, or give up the individual responsibility for each person to think for themselves and to know God for themselves, we will betray our tradition and be the lesser for it. Fifth and last, we're a loving, caring community, and we care about the community around us. This church has a history of participation in the political and social life of its community, perhaps more so than any other church. We have seen and continue to see how the world can destroy the human spirit. So we pay attention, and we give time and money to the effort. But that is not our main business. We're not a psychological group. We're not a help organization. We're a Christian church, and our business is the Spirit. For 150 years, we've worked in this house of worship to find the Spirit for ourselves and act as a beacon for others struggling in the world to find it for themselves. These 5 points, these 5 pillars can seem contradictory, as I said. We pursue the Bible, but we're also scientifically grounded, and you most certainly would not call us Christian scientists. We're independent, but also a loving and caring community. How does such a place exist, and where do these values, and how do these values get expressed? I close with a beautiful expression of one of these values that we hold dear in this church from Duncan Littlefair, delivered during Advent 1998. Our family listens to this most every Christmas season. Duncan says, "Faith is one of the most precious of all values. I do not understand how you can live a life of dignity or meaning and worth without faith. It's not just some religious tradition and inheritance, not just that, although it is. It's an utterly necessary human quality if we are to maintain a qualitative level of life so that we will not have to come to Christmas season with a community torn with dissension and with religious people all over the world fighting, hating each other, and with our hearts totally burdened in the darkness of defeat and sorrow. With faith, we transcend our defeats and our failures. We see through our sorrows. We find a light shining eternally. Faith in something good. Faith in an ideal that you think is good for you and must be good for all people, anywhere, anytime. Faith in another person. Faith in your family. Faith in your country. Faith in yourself. That you are of quality and that quality will win. Now, you cannot have faith without having forgiveness. In your faith, you bet on something good. You may even stake your life on it, but you may fail. There is no guarantee of success in the immediate, or for that matter, even in the long run. But you have to believe in something. Believe that it is essential, beautiful, and good, and that it will save and redeem. Faith in yourself. You know how much you fail yourself. You have to know. You know how many times you don't do what you should do, and you do what you don't want to do. That's the famous and insightful word from the Apostle Paul, isn't it? For the things I don't want to do, I do, and the things I want to do, I don't do. And there's a law of my body, and it works against the law of my mind, leading me into sin. Of course, you will sin. You will fall short. You will fail. But you must have faith. Faith that your heart is right, that your ideals are valid, that your hopes are well-grounded, that there is something worthy in you to be adored, to be worshiped, and to be followed. And there is something in other persons, that same God that we celebrate as being born in mankind. That's the meaning of Christmas. So you hold your faith, and you hold it with compassion, and you hold it with forgiveness, and it will see you through all the troubles that may come. And it will lead you. It will lead you into a transcendence that rises above anything.
distant triumphant song, so your hearts need to be brave again, and your arms need to be strong. Yes, we are in a difficult time, but life has always had difficult times. Go in the strength of your faith, in the power of your love, and do not give up. Amen.